the last sprint. So wanted to kick off the Sprint 10 demo. This is the last sprint that will be used, whose features will be used in the next version of CloudForms. We have a few things to show, and wanted to go around and show what we have here. So, Greg, do you want to kick us off, Greg B, with the OpenStack stuff?
Sure. I'm going to get my screen share started. Can everyone see the Manage IQ interface?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So for this sprint, what I've been working on is getting OpenStack tenant support, as well as showing quotas associated with those tenants. So I have an OpenStack provider added, and if I go click on that provider, we have a new relationship added here. It needs a an icon, but we can add that at any time. But we can see the list of the number of cloud tenants here. If I click on that, I can see a list of cloud tenants. So right now I've got an admin and an engineering tenant added to my cloud provider. And in this list, I can see that the number of instances for each tenant. So if I click on admin, on the summary page, I can see a little bit more detail about this tenant, the security groups, the instances, the images, and then down below, I can also see the quota associated with this tenant. So for some of the quota, you can see things like it's unlimited. This is something defined by OpenStack. In other cases, we just don't know how to gather that information yet. Things like injected file content bytes. We don't, at this point, we don't really know in our own system what that data means right now. So we have a couple options here. We could hide these rows, or we could just show them and say, we don't collect this data. We don't know about it. We don't know how to give you a valid value of this right now. As far as what kind of information we really collect. The other thing to show is that we've also added a tenants tab up here. It gives you the same view as clicking the tenant list from a provider, except in this case it would show all tenants across all OpenStack providers. In this case, I've only got one provider, so it just shows the same list. Something else we've worked on is being able to provision into different tenants. So if I go into the provision workflow, select an image, fill in some of these details. I guess I should make it a valid email address. There we go. Under the Environments tab, we've added a new Cloud Tenant dropdown, which shows you the list of tenants. Since I'm going to test the admin tenant, I'll select admin. And then under Properties, when you select an instance type, in this case I'll select medium, it updates the quota section down here to show you the current quota that's available. One of the things that's missing here right now is being able to show how much this particular selected instance type will consume of this quota. We have that data. It's just a simple matter of actually showing it on this page. Also, this could use a little bit of UI help to make it a little bit prettier, I think, for the end user. At the moment, it's just kind of data that we can show to the user. So I'll submit this task, and it'll go off and do something. You can see that it's in pending state right now. I go back to the instances, I can wait for that instance to start. I'm also going to show from the OpenStack side. This is the OpenStack that I have added. It takes a little while for the provisioned instance to actually kick off. On another screen right now, I'm watching the list of workers, so I can see if a generic worker starts up and then takes over the job and then stops. I think in the meantime, what I'll do is go provision another instance into a different tenant. Same basic workflow. But I'm going to test out the engineering tenant. So I'll select engineering from the environments tab, and I'll select again the medium sized instance type and submit that. So I go back. Oh, looks like the other one finished. So we should be able to see in OpenStack, in the admin tenant, I have the admin tenant test 2 available. If I give this one about a minute or so, the automation task will kick off and it should launch into the engineering tenant.
Hey, Greg?
Yes.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So you're logged in as administrator right now?
I am.
Provisioning to the engineering tenant?
That's correct.
Can an engineering tenant log in and provision their own?
So after I was done provisioning tenants, I was going to talk about a couple of the caveats we've run into.
Oh, okay, we can wait if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe while this is provisioning, I can kind of talk about that. That's a nice segue. So one of the things we've noticed is that at the moment, we still require an admin user to be added to as the kind of EMS user. So when you're setting up the cloud provider in ManageIQ, we require that the user be an admin user. OpenStack treats this kind of funny. He needs to be an admin user of any tenant. It doesn't need to be an admin user of the admin tenant, but it does need to be an admin user. The other thing is, currently, that same user needs to be associated with all tenants right now. The way we collect data, we ask for all of the available tenants, and then we loop through those tenants and try to get all the data associated with them. If that user is not associated with one of those tenants, we'll be able to see the tenant. So we'll be able to know that there is a tenant. But if that user is not associated with the tenant, he cannot authenticate against it, and then he will not be able to get the data from it. And we'll see errors in the logs associated with that. Right now, Rich Oliveri and I are kind of going through and figuring out a good way to mitigate that. One of the options we're tossing around right now is to say it'd be nice during the refresh process to say which tenants does the current user is he actually associated with. I ran into a problem with that this week trying to test that concept out. I've got to run down some of the loose ends on that, figure out how to actually make that work. The other thing is, just this morning I hit a bug in Fog with respect to how Fog supports Swift, which is the object store in OpenStack. It looks like a really simple bug to be fixed. I got to determine if it's still a problem in the upstream version of Fog. If I can validate that it is a problem, I think I can get a pull request into Fog to get that fixed. And we can just kind of rely on the fact that we can just have that available. So I'm going to come into the engineering group right now, and you can see that the engineering tenant, or the engineering instance that I spun up in the engineering tenant has started and available in OpenStack. So that's what we've added for OpenStack for this sprint. I know it's been a feature that people have been waiting for a while. I'm hoping that it satisfies what people are looking for, looking to get a lot of good feedback on how we can improve it and make it better. Any other questions? I guess not. I guess we're moving on to the next presenter.
Thanks, Greg. That was a really good overview.
Yeah, that was good.
Brona, do you want to show us what you have on SCVMM?
Sure. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so since the last sprint, I've been largely focusing on event support for System Center. But given that event support is not part of the 3.1 release, and given that events are what trigger EMS refreshes and keep the inventory up to date, we had to come up with another mechanism to keep the inventory accurate. So we added a scheduled EMS refresher job specifically for System Center, VMM, that will execute on a timer. And so it's a very simple configuration that's made to the VMDB config file that is currently open on my screen. If I scroll down to the EMS refresh key, you'll see I've just added 2 lines, SCVMM and refresh interval. So I've set the timer to run every minute, but the default is every 4 minutes, and a customer can change that as they find appropriate. And so to demo this, I'm going to change the power status of a virtual machine, and we will observe a change in the power status icon and property, which would be a result of this job running. So let's see. Okay, so let's pick Salesforce A. I'm going to power this guy on. And while we're waiting on that to complete, I'd like to share the current status of event support. So since the last sprint, some good progress has been made. I was at the point where I was mapping an event to the virtual machine with a view to kicking off an EMS refresh. When I realized the virtual machine GUID in the event did not match the virtual machine GUID in the inventory. And generally speaking, a name is not a reliable way to uniquely identify a VM. So I had to open up a support ticket with Microsoft. And although they haven't completed their research yet, at this point, it looks like we're going to have to make do with the name, which should be fine given that the VM name is unique within Operations Manager and VMM. So, you know, at this point, we can move forward. Okay, so we'll check to see if the power status has changed for Salesforce A. It typically takes about between 1 and 2 minutes, so it might not be done yet, but we'll see. Greg B's face is in front of my Salesforce A VM. Did I power it on or off? I can't remember. Let me check.
You powered it on. It was red before now.
Powered it on. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Demo complete. But when event support is complete, we do not have to rely on this timer. An event will come in and it will trigger an EMS refresh for the virtual machine that the event pertains to. So it's kind of just like a bridge, really. And just incidentally, there is a timer in the VMDB config file for all EMSs, and it's set to run every 24 hours, just updates the inventory. It's kind of just like a safety net. So that's been there for a while. Any questions? All right, over to the next presenter.
Looks good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruno. Looks great.
Thank you.
Roberto, you want to show us where we are in REST API?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okie doke. I'll share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So in this sprint, so the enhancements made in the REST API is to expose the equivalent of the provisioning and the automation requests that are available in SOAP. So essentially, we have the VM provision request, EVM provision request EX. So those are a single collection here, and the automation request. And the querying would be the standard, the REST query. So if we go to the guides under REST API, okay. So you'll see in the collections, we have two new entry points, which are API provision requests and automation requests. So from a usage perspective, essentially a post would be, requesting them and the gets, to query status on these requests. And okay, so you have the ability to post a single or multiple requests within, a single network traffic here. So let's go with provisioning first. Okay. So similar, fields from the SOAP equivalent. So we have the standard versioning, which is not required here, as well as the requester. So the username would default to the authenticated REST API caller. And the other ones, template field, VM fields, of course, and the optional tags, initial values, and the EMS and MIQ custom attributes. So this is a standard post. We also, handle the action-based signature, where you can pass in that request within a resource block, and that would do the same. But the nice thing about our action resource type signature, we can also request the multiple provisioning here with the resources equivalent. So you can come and provision multiple VMs, and again with the REST signatures we have, you'll get a request, provision request, back for each, giving you the details. So we'll be demoing that. So that's from the provisioning side. Let's go back to automation. And again, to extend to complement the SOAP requests, the signature again would be the URI parts, where you would select the namespace class instance and message parameters for that automation instance, as well as the requester. And similar to the provisioning requests, you can also trigger multiple automation requests in one shot. So that's from the spec perspective. Let's jump over to demo. Okay, so here. Alrighty. So we'll start with a single provisioning here. Okay, we'll do a single provision. Okay, so the request has been sent in. You see the provision request is being sent back here. ID is 171. So we can query that particular request, or if you're just interested in the status or the message, so you can look at things being progressing here. And let's see, that one was a V demo. Okay, so let's jump into timeout. Okay, looks like it's still cooking here. Still in the process. We'll give it a minute. Okay, so one thing to mention while this is going, you can also query the tasks pertaining to a provisioning request. So either request tasks, and that will give you, what's available. You can also expand on these. And requests. Nope, sorry. Request resources. There you go. Okay, and so if you have one or multiple tasks for each, you'll have all the good details on things progressing there. And there's also we introduced an alias, so you can also do the same with tasks. Okay, I see a VM provisioned successfully, and there we go. AAB demo VM is provisioned. So let's have a little bit more fun here, and we'll post a multiple provisioning request. So similar to the initial guide, but here you have, I think I have three. So 3 requests here, and again with the API signature, you basically get a provisioning request for each of them. So here IDs 174, 173, and 172, I guess. So if you just query provision requests, API get. Okay. And so that would be these 3 guys at the end. So again, you can query status on individuals. Waiting the end. So that's going to go for a while. And let's see, we're looking for AAB demo VM1, 2, and 3. Okay. All right, so while that's cooking, I could jump over to Automate land. Okay. All right, so here we're doing a simple inspect me Automate instance with some parameters. And entry point is automation requests. And there we go. So that's in. I guess we can query requests. And there it is. We are pending. So that's cooking. And at the same time, I'll kick off the multiple automation requests. And here we have 3 returned. So if we just refresh this guy, there we go. We have 3 additional ones coming in. And the original one finished. These are in the process of getting cooking. Again, like the provisioning requests, you can query the status. There we go. Yep, and these are finished. So there we go. So those guys are done. Let's jump back to the provisioning, the RH AVM. We're up to 32. And there we go. The 3 VMs, AV demo, 1, 2, and 3 that were added from the multiple provisioning request. And that's what we have. Any questions?
No questions, but really nice, really nice, Alberto. Nice job.
All right, thank you.
Looks great.
Off to the next presenter.
Okay. Rich, are you on? Do you want to tell us what's new in the world of storage and fleecing? Rich?
Kind of congested. Is you guys hear an echo?
No.
No?
No echo.
No. Okay, so I'm I'm the only one that hears it, so I'll see if I can get through this. So for on the OpenStack side, we finished the storage implementation and also extending the OpenStack handle implementation to handle multi-tenant specific or tenant specific objects, and that seems to work out okay. So we're now collecting information for volumes, volume snapshots, object stored containers and objects, and we make associations between the volumes and their running instances, which are now connected through disks. The next step there will be to work with Dan's team to expose that through the UI. It's still kind of hard for me to talk with this echo, so bear with me. In the past, did work on the fix for the. Yeah, my microphone was muted. Hold on.
Rich, are you using the phone too? Okay. Rich?
All right, it looks like we lost Rich or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Harpreet, do you want to show us the various new things we have in the user interface?
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can hear you a little louder if possible.
How about now?
Now it's better.
Share my screen, and you guys see my screen now?
No, cannot see your screen yet.
How about now?
It looks to be loading now. Yep.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay.
We got it.
Okay. So in the last sprint, the support was added to copy a single selected class, instance, or method. And during this sprint, we enhanced that feature to allow users to be able to select multiple classes, instances, or methods and be able to copy them across the domains or in the same domain. So I'll demo that feature first. And so if you go to a class, you see a list of instances, and you can select multiple instances there, and then copy selected instances, and you can either select the same domain that was selected before, or you can pick any other domain. So in my case, I'm just going to use my test domain, and I'm going to copy it to the same path. And some of the labels on the screen were changed to make more sense to the user. And also this checkbox was moved up before the namespace chooser, because earlier what was happening was it was only being displayed to a user when a namespace was selected. So now a user can select this even, they don't have to select the namespace first. So if you want, you can change the namespace. This features, this works the same way as it was working before. So in my case, I'm just going to copy to the same path, and I'm copying these 4 instances to test domain. And there it is. So that's the test domain, and that's the class alert. And these are the 4 instances that were copied to the test domain. So you can do the same to the classes or instances or list of methods. And another feature that was added was that that PR has not been merged yet, but it's currently in a review process. So if you go to an instance, class, or a method summary screen, you will be able to see if that instance has been overridden to any other domains. So this is the domain that you're currently on, so it shows same domain next to it. So, and it's not a link, but others are the links that will jump to the instance or a class, whichever, depending on what screen you're looking at. So if I click here in the customer domain, it's going to take me to the instance in the customer domain. That's the override of this instance. So you see now I'm jumped to the instance in the customer domain, and it expanded all the parent nodes of that instance in the tree. So these are the 2 features that were added during the sprint. I think that's all I have to show.
Thanks, Harpreet.
Looks great.
Okay. Greg M., you want to tell us what's new in your world?
Sure. You hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. So, right, nothing really to demo, but I want to talk about the work that was done in this sprint, which on the last sprint, we showed the widget import-export screens, and those were all working, but the actual import, getting the widgets created, was not finished, and that whole feature wasn't merged yet. So I just wanted to mention that that's all merged in now. So that's looking really good. It's a great feature, and I know the field getting a lot of field requests for that. Otherwise, a lot of work around automate. We've been doing more method and model cleanup. So hopefully people, I know an email went out this morning. Some people had seen an early preview, were very happy with the restructuring. So that's great to hear. I know I've shown that on previous ones, so I didn't want to bore people driving through the automate model today. But we created the namespaces for cloud, infrastructure, and service, which really helps break down the different components where they were spread out all over before. So it's a lot easier to understand how components interact with each other, and if you need to isolate somebody to just a certain area, it's much easier to give them just a single namespace to work in instead of having to jump around the model. Let's see. Otherwise, we did the work, on the model side to support the UI components that Harpreet was showing there for the copy features. And one of the things that's still in progress here is we're working on moving what's now the best fit logic, which happens during resolution. You don't have much control over moving that into the state machine for, say, VM provisioning, so that people can then control either when it happens. They have much more control over where they place that method. It'll probably extend to things like networking and stuff as well, but we're getting those things moved around. It's a little bit of work to change it and also be able to support existing customer models, since those will be imported as well. So making sure that we don't break the current functionality, but expand that feature out. So otherwise, we started doing research into cloud formations and OpenStack Heat templates. There was a article posted up on Talk about that. Did some initial design work, and then we started a prototype. So at this point, during Amazon Refresh, we can collect the stacks and the templates. We're associating those to the instances and the security groups, as well as the VPC networks that are involved in that template. So we still need to do some parsing to associate those to the images that the template refers to, but that's just additional work. And we've looked a little bit at the Heat side of things, but haven't started on a prototype there. And really, the goal around this whole piece is to be able to expose the templates through the services so that they can be ordered. And that's kind of where the stuff is going. We haven't started on that piece of it yet, but the ultimate goal is to be able to support the templates within CloudFormations and OpenStack through service ordering. So that's looking good. And we've started some early work on Foreman, just a little bit of design discussions, enough to start getting a talk discussion going around that. So that hasn't been posted yet, but just getting a little bit of research in so that we can get that information posted up and start working on a prototype for that as well. That's what I have for the sprint.
Thanks, Greg. Next up is Keenan, who's going to show us what's new in the world of security.
Okay, is this coming across? Share my desktop. Oh, there we go. Cool. Is this coming across?
Looks like it's loaded up. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. I just ran it through once, so that means some trailing files are going to be hanging around. So in the last episode that you all heard, the IPA is kind of throwing us a few spins, but in the end of the day, we would like to be able to install SSL certificates. And we did come up with a method for the project. So if all of you want to secure your database using SSL certificates, sometimes you might not want to ask Alberto or me, how do I get SSL up and running? So my first RPM I have installed, I have created here, acts as a mock CA. So it's easy for us to copy these things around. I know that if you wanted to get like Cupid running, just like hypothetically, and you wanted to copy some certificates around, you'd want something similar to here. So I have now. Is this big enough, or do I need this bigger for text?
Looks good. Looks good to me.
Okay, cool. So we have something called SneakerNet, which is a CA for us, and it is playing on the fact that you are manually copying these files around. One of the goals of this, rather than what we had before, when I showed you the SSL work, you guys said, wow, this is super secure, this is super easy. And the problem is we were doing something similar behind the scenes. So the end goal here was for somebody to manually be copying these files around and then scratch their head and say, wait 1 second, why am I doing this? And our answer would be, well, just upgrade to the to a real CA. Don't rely upon this. I mean, if you want a proof of concept, that's great. But we definitely wanted a user to be aware that they're copying files around and that maybe this is not the optimal way to workflow. So when they are requesting a certificate, they'll say, please get me a certificate. I want to request it. And they'll say who they want to request it from, in our case, SneakerNet. And we will download, we'll get a certificate for them, we'll get a key for them, we'll get the root certificate from them, and we'll set up some name. In this case, we're going to set up a certificate for our Postgres server. So here, we just asked for one. Now, if somebody wants to use IPA in the future, they would actually swap SneakerNet for IPA. So this allows us to work as developers, not change our workflow, not really change anything, just specify that we're using a different CA. Behind the scenes, the whole nomer for SneakerNet is varlib. It actually just copied the CSR to a location that we then use SneakerNet, our sneakers, and we copy this to the server that is actually the real CA. Get cert though, list. So this says, hey, you know what? This is outstanding. The whole reason why, I'll talk in superlatives, and then you guys can call me on it in the future. The whole reason why certificates in general are difficult is because they're asynchronous. And at the beginning, I did not know this as well as I could have. So let's just sneaker it, SCP, and that is to get it back. Cool. Let's just copy all of our files over to master, who actually contains our key signatures and all that kind of good stuff. And we just copied those across. Now, if you were over on master, is this font too small? It looks smaller. There we go. Here is that request. I just SCP'd it across. And we just created a quick, we just created something quick which says, hey, I'll give you the root certificate. And for all the outstanding sign-in requests in this directory, let's just run some quick little stub to sign it. Now, somebody wanted to use a different CA. Maybe they wanted Active Directory, and you and I haven't written all of the code in our area to support Active Directory. Somebody could actually do this for a CA that we don't support yet. So that allows us to always say yes and pay us a little bit of money, and we'll add the feature. Or never mind, I'll figure that one out. So I'll just sign these. And here, that's kind of neat is that we had this certificate signing request come across the world. We just generated a real certificate that the end user wants. So sneaker friendly. We will SCP Control R. So we will go over to that box, copy those back to here, and get cert. By the way, we hadn't touched SneakerNet yet. So hey, could you just refresh the CAs for us, please? Kind of cool that SneakerNet's actually registered, and believe it or not, getting that word in there was the most work out of all of this. And then let's just refresh. Could you tell me what outstanding requests are there again? Oh, that's right. We have this Postgres certificate we want. Oh, by the way, the root certificate will be written to this file. So, yeah, well, I just moved some files around out from underneath you. So why don't we just refresh all of your outstanding requests. We notice now we have our certificate. It generated a key for us, and we have our root certificate. So now when we start up Postgres, I hadn't done this part of the demo yet, so never mind. does anybody remember? Never, I don't remember where it is. Okay, so when we start up Postgres, we can find out. Okay, I'll just call the demo there. When we start it up, it will find the certificate and we'll be able to start up that work. What I'm doing right now is for us to support IPA. I'm working with the Kerberos aspects of our machines. For each service that actually requests a certificate, we need to have Kerberos credentials, and we need to register each of the services, which ends up being a workflow in and of itself. And that is the major barrier. That's the last barrier we have right now for me to be able to show you in the appliance console, pointing this at IPA instead of at the sneaker net, which just, I don't know, it's definitely a little tame, but it allows, as you can see, it's pretty down to the metal, but it allows us to focus on just whether SSL is working rather than Kerberos, which I know you guys are probably all experts and know more than I do. So that's on. Thanks.
Thanks, Keenan. I think that concludes kind of all the new features that we have, unless I missed somebody. Okay. Some of the things that you saw, like the Microsoft stuff, the OpenStack stuff, and even some of the stuff that Keenan showed, is we have pull requests for that are still being merged. So as soon as they're merged, that nightly build will have that on the community side. And on the product side, we're shooting for a build early next week. All right, any questions out there from the audience? Okay. Well, at this point, I'd like to conclude the sprint demo, and thank you everyone for joining in and presenting. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.